Well, happy almost tax day. I know that the IRS has thankfully delayed it for a couple of days, usually on the 15th, but you get a couple extra days, just in case that happy tax day got you panicked, though I have heard that most accountants are not going to take you now, so you might have to just file an extension. But isn't tax day a good day to talk about the common good? I was just looking at my watch and I was thinking, my goodness, when we talk about tax these days, we talk a lot about tax cuts. And I am going to have to make some sermon cuts, I think, as I go through my sermon this morning. But the tax cuts seem to be destroying the social safety net, and I'm hoping that my sermon cuts don't destroy my sermon. So let's give it a try. When we think of taxes, of course, as Mary Beth reminded us in our call to the offering, we sometimes think about that phrase from the Bible that we render unto Caesar. And what does that mean? And how might it relate to the common good? According to the theologian Sarah Rudin, Paul in Romans 13 uses the Greek verb apodidomi, which means pay what you owe, all taxes without exception, in a cooperative spirit. It is the last phrase in a cooperative spirit that articulates some of the essence of the idea of the common good. Some years ago, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation held this, let's call it a reality TV show. They wanted to decide who the best, greatest Canadian was. And so they had a long list and people voted, and in the end, Canadians chose as the greatest Canadian a man whose name was Tommy Douglas. Tommy Douglas was a politician in the province in which I grew up, Saskatchewan, who was fond of telling this story. And this is a story that he told about Mouseland. He said that Mouseland was a place where all the little mice lived and played, were born and died. And they lived much the same as you and I do. They even had a government. Every 4 years, they had an election. This is Canadian, we do it in 4-year cycles. Used to walk to the polls and cast their ballots. Some of them even got rides to the polls and got a ride for the next 4 years afterwards too. Just like you and me, and every time on election day, all the little mice used to go to the ballot box and they used to elect a government. A government made up of big, fat, black cats. Now, if you think it's strange that mice should elect a government of cats, look at the history and maybe you'll see they weren't any stranger than us. Now, I'm not saying anything against the cats. They conducted their government with dignity. They passed good laws, that is, laws that are good for cats. But the laws that were good for cats weren't very good for mice. One of the laws that said that mouse holes had to be big enough so that a cat could get his paw in. Another law said that mice could only run at certain speeds, so a cat could get his breakfast without too much effort. All the laws were good laws for cats. But oh, they were hard on mice, and life was getting harder and harder, and when the mice couldn't put up with it anymore, they decided that something had to be done, so they went en masse to the polls. They voted the black cats out, and they put in the white cats. See, now the white cats has put up a terrific campaign. They said, all Mouseland needs is more vision. They said, the trouble with Mouseland is the round mouse holes. If you put us in, we'll make square mouse holes. And they did. And the square mouse holes were twice as big as the round ones. And now a cat could get both paws in. And life was tougher than ever. And when they couldn't get that anymore, they voted the white cats out and put the black ones back in. Then they went back to white cats and then black cats. They even tried half black and half white cats, and they called that a coalition. They even got one government made up of cats with spots on them. They were cats that tried to make a noise like a mouse but ate like a cat. You see, my friends, the trouble wasn't with the color of the cat. The trouble was with that they were cats, and because they were cats, they naturally looked after cats instead of mice. Presently, there came along one little mouse who had an idea. My friends, watch out for the little fella with an idea. And he said to the other mice, "Look, fellas, why do we keep electing a government made up of cats? Why don't we elect a government made up of mice?" "Oh," they said, "he's a Bolshevik, lock him up." So they put him in jail. "But I want to remind you," said Tommy Douglas, "that you can lock up a mouse or a person, but you can't lock up an idea." Well, Tommy Douglas's legacy in Canada, and probably the reason that he was voted on a reality TV show as the greatest Canadian, was universal health care. As a boy, he had injured his knee, which may have led to a lifetime of crutches or even amputation. And his family had no means at the time to pay for the surgery. But as a stroke of luck, an orthopedic surgeon offered to operate on him as a teaching for his medical students. And the operation saved his leg. He would later say that, "I felt that no boy should have to depend either for his leg or his life upon the ability of his parents to raise enough money to bring a first-class surgeon to his bedside." He then said, "I'm sure that the standard of public morality we've helped build will force government in Canada to approve complete health insurance," which by 1972, Tommy Douglas's conviction that no one's health should depend on wealth was translated into a national policy as Medicare became a reality in Canada. So when I started thinking about the common good, I often think about that time. The common good is often threatened, which has happened since the time of Medicare. There are those who would wish to privatize the medical system, and those who continue for that struggle that all have access. It's lovely synchronicity when you have a sermon topic and then you go to the bookstore and a world-renowned economist has just published a book about the common good. I was like, it's so nice that Robert Reich would publish a book about the common good just before I have to preach about it. Thank you to Professor Reich. So he summarized this notion of the common good is that the good we have in common has been a commitment to respecting the rule of law, including intent and spirit, to protecting our democratic institutions, to discovering and spreading the truth, to being open and to change and tolerant of our differences, to ensuring equal political rights and equal opportunity, to participating in our civic life together, and sacrificing for life together. Note that these are not the constitutional rights and freedoms we possess as citizens. They are the essential elements of what we owe one another. We passionately agree about all manner of things, but we must share these commitments to each other because they are or have been what makes us a people. Although we have often fallen short of achieving them, they are ideals that we have strived to realize. They have informed our judgments about right and wrong, decisions we make that could affect others, and our understanding of our obligation as citizens. They have bound us together. They are large and noble obligations. The central moral question of our age is whether we are still committed to them. Are we? Are you? Reverend Leslie has been preaching a wonderful series of sermons on do-it-yourself virtues. In that spirit, I found it helpful to understand that when the founders spoke of virtues, it was not as we may understand in terms of individual or personal virtues like kindness or generosity. For them, virtue was a concern and commitment to the common good. Without virtuous citizenry, they feared that the republic would succumb to authoritarian rule. Reich says that, a concern for the common good is a moral attitude. It recognizes that we're all in it together. If there is not a common good, there is no society. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. summed it up in his letter from a Birmingham jail. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Another economist has talked about the threat to the common good. Paul Krugman refers to our time as the new Gilded Age. Some of the evidence of that might be that in 2016, the typical American household had a net worth 14% lower than the same typical household in 1984, or that the Wall Street bonus pool alone was larger than the annual year-round earnings of all 3.3 million Americans working full-time at the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. I suppose using Tommy Douglas's allegory, the cat seemed to still be in control. It's a recommitment to the common good, which I see as a spiritual and religious antidote to this new Gilded Age. The common good is about inclusion, joining together to achieve common good, to achieve common goals. It makes sense that on a new member Sunday, we would lift up this notion of the common good as those new members covenant and commit to the mission of this congregation, which articulates a call to the common good. So do the principles of Unitarian Universalism encapsulate the call to work for the common good. We affirm and promote the web of all existence of which we are a part. I think that though there is a threat, as has been articulated by many, to the common good, there are those like you and others who participate in and ally with and witness to the voices on the margins, the movements pushing us toward a better future for the common good. Like Black Lives Matter, immigrant justice groups, those working for economic and climate justice. Is not our environment the essence of what the common good is? This may be because the common good is rooted in the human psyche across all continents, cultures, and times. Ancient Hindu texts promote Lok Sangra, or serving the welfare of others, as a step to happiness. Islam calls adherents to come to common grounds, as instructed by the Quran. Buddhism instructs one has responsibilities to all of society. Central to Judaism is the concept of tikkun olam, which calls upon Jews to repair and heal the world as central to one's religious commitments. A commitment to the common good is found in African culture and ethics. One example is from the Akan people from Ghana and the Ivory Coast, who have an art form which is a crocodile with two heads but a single stomach, symbolizing that all members of the community have the same basic needs and articulate the importance of the common good to the whole community. The common good is central to Christian teachings. You can't get a more direct call about this than the final judgment in the Gospel of Matthew. As you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. I have been taught that in many indigenous cultures, the circle is seen as sacred, and within it, everyone is equal, has unique contributions to make, and is expected to share those individual gifts for the common good of the people. I see the manifestation of the work for the common good currently in the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival is uniting tens of thousands of people across the nation to challenge the evils of systemic racism, poverty, the war, economy, ecological devastation, and the nation's distorted morality. We're asking you to step up and join our efforts. We'll continue to inform you of ways which you can be engaged in this important campaign. May we continue the joyous struggle to make the common good fashionable again. May we be in it for the long haul. As Reinhold Niebuhr reminds us, nothing that is worth doing can be achieved in our lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. May we be some of the ones to make it so.